What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 175 of the Stand Up Guys podcast. I'm your host, the incomparable Zach Jones, joined as always by star of the porn parody Aquaman in The Lost Ding Dong, uh, where he plays the villainous Brown Manta, the phenomenal AJ Singh. AJ, how's
What's
it
up,
going?
everybody? How's it going?
So if you couldn't guess, this is going to be our review of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And you're probably saying to yourself, hey, that came out last week. Why would we watch this? And I say, because dummies, we're going to have fun tearing this movie to pieces. And also, I think there's certain parts of the country where it didn't come out till this week, like Australia or something. So our Australian listeners, man, this is fresh off the presses here. So AJ, as we always do, first we're going to do our non-spoiler section where we just kind of give our top level thoughts and whether we think people should see this movie in theaters, wait for streaming, or not watch it at all. And then we will get into. I think we're the only YouTube channel that's going to analyze this movie in as much depth. Like if any other YouTube channel goes over this movie with the fine comb or the fine tooth comb that we do, I would be surprised. But that's what we bring you here at the Stand Up Guys. So yeah, AJ, I'll start with you. Top level thoughts on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Look, I mean, last movie we watched was the Marvels. I'll compare this. I thought this was better.
I did too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked. There's some emotional investment in this movie, unlike that movie. There's a sibling story too, which is fun to watch a little bit, you know. So overall, I think it was a decent movie. You know, it was nothing to write home about, but it was pretty good. I wouldn't go see it in theaters. You know, if it came out on streaming, I'd check it out. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad watch.
So your recommendation is more wait for streaming?
Yeah.
I don't think I liked it quite as much as you, but yeah, I will say I think I liked it more than the Marvels. I think it's still a bad movie. And my problem with it is basically the same as Aquaman 1, which is I think the plot and the characters are razor thin to me. I think they just provide enough structure to go from like mindless action scene to mindless action scene.
Yeah.
And to me, the movie becomes tiring after a while. And I thought the same with the first Aquaman.
I can see that.
So I think
CGI, so much CGI is all of it is CGI.
I will say though, like most of CGI I don't think is bad. Like it's decent. I think there was a couple shots I remember of like seeing like some of the underwater action scenes. Like there's definitely a couple shots of like Mera where I'm like, I thought her figure underwater looked a little weird. Like maybe they just took a scan of her body and then just like totally did like a CG animation with it. Like I wasn't sure exactly how they did some of that, but there was a few scenes like that where I'm like, oh, maybe this looks slightly off, but nothing that ever like took me out of the movie, like you know the bad CGI babies in the Flash or anything like that. So yeah, the effects weren't bad, and I think that's one thing you can say about these Aquaman movies is like is an impressive amount of like visual things going on, but to me, I'm just like because I'm not really invested in the characters or the story. To me, all that kind of stuff is just kind of like noise, and it's kind of forgettable. And I'm just like, okay, can we get on with it?
Right.
So I think my official recommendation would be just to skip this movie altogether and not watch it. But I will say a caveat is because I know the first Aquaman movie does have its fans. And I would say, like, if you like the first Aquaman movie, then I would recommend this because I don't think it's to me, like, any worse than the first Aquaman movie. To me, the problems I had with this movie are the same problems I had with Aquaman 1. So I think if you liked Aquaman 1, like, I think you are going to enjoy this, you know?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. You know, as far as the acting, like, man, I don't know, like, Jason Momoa is like such an over the top character that like it's fine, I guess. I don't know. What do you think of it? Like just the his performance.
I mean, I think he's a charming guy. Like his personality's just fun. He's like a dude, bro, I guess. Uh, and they really play on that in this movie, both movies. Um, and it's fine. It's nothing. He doesn't grab you with his performance or anything like that. So
A lot of people were speculating because of all the drama around Amber Heard. Like, were they going to cut her out of this movie? Like, I'll say she's not in it a lot, but she's in it like enough. Like, she makes her presence known, I guess. But
yeah,
they definitely focus the story on him and his brother. Once again, played by Patrick Wilson.
yeah.
And like, I think like you kind of alluded to, I think that's probably as far as the characters in this movie, that their relationship is probably like the strongest part of this movie. Like their
Hmm.
back and forth, you know. Um but yeah, there's and we'll get to it in the spoilers. There is some ridiculous uh things that happen in this movie. Oh, and AJ, once again, my eagle eye. I don't know if you caught this, but I caught a little Easter egg in this movie that I suspect, and I don't know if you'll agree. I suspect that Guinness may have sponsored this movie.
Oh yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if you picked up on that or not.
for sure.
There was like three like blatant like Guinness spots in this movie, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
it was funny to me. But hey, these movies are expensive, and this movie is not making its money back. I don't believe. I think it's doing pretty
they,
poorly. Yeah,
they didn't even market it really.
yeah. Hopefully, they save money on marketing, but I think it's doing like a little better overseas than it is in the States, but still like not great.
Right.
So like I'm guessing they're gonna lose money on this one as well, which isn't surprising. I think everybody kind of suspected that, going into this. But yeah, it was still, like I said, I think I liked it better. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I liked it better than the Marvels,
Hmm.
which is surprising. Like if you would have told me earlier this year between the Marvels and Aquaman that I would have liked Aquaman more, like I would not have believed you. But here we are, and I do think it was a little bit better. And also, like as far as DC movies, I think I like this better. Well, I for sure liked it better than the Flash. I think,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and yeah, but still, it's nothing that I'm ever going to revisit. It's just kind of one of those movies you watch it and then you forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You know,
mean, DC's done with this storyline anyway, so
yeah, that's another thing that hurt this movie. I think is that people are just like, well, this is the end of the line. It's not, it's not leading to anywhere, and
yeah,
it's not culminating. It's not paying off like any, it's not like Infinity War, where it's like paying off these years of setup or anything. It's just another movie, so
yeah.
there's no excitement going into it. And plus, everybody knows that this movie like was recut like a million times, and like
I think a lot of people just didn't like. I don't know if this is like a real like issue, but I know a lot of guys didn't like the fact that Amber Heard was in this movie, and I'm I don't know. Like she didn't seem that important to the plot, you know. I mean, maybe they could have cut her out and possibly gotten some of those people to come watch the movie. I don't know.
yeah, I'll be honest, like I didn't care at all. I didn't follow that Johnny Depp trial like a lot of people did, and I'm just
Yeah,
like whatever. Like it's one more Aquaman movie. Who really cares? But yeah,
I
she's not in it like a substantial amount.
right. I did look for the floating turd somewhere in the background, but there was never there.
Didn't see that. Yeah, that's too bad. That would have saved this movie, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
nice little Easter egg.
okay, AJ, do you got anything else you want to mention before we get a little deeper into spoiler territory?
Let's get into it.
All right, guys, we're going to do spoilers ahead from this point on, and then at the very end, we'll give our official 1 out of 10 scores for Aquaman. Now, AJ, I got to say, I was surprised. So I saw this movie actually on Christmas Day. I went to a matinee, and I was thinking like there would be nobody in there, but there was actually like a decent amount of people in my screening. I was like, wow, it seems weird, that anybody would be here, but
Yeah,
Still,
that is surprising.
still the
Like
movie,
we kind of had to watch it.
yeah, yeah, and still the movie did not do too well. But
Right.
okay, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So AJ, I also made these notes after I watched the movie, and so now it's been like almost a week. So like you might have to help me fill in some things. I don't even know if I'll understand all these, but I wrote we open on pirates taking over a cargo ship. Arthur shows up and easily beats them, and basically he's narrating this story of what happened to his newborn son.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. So this is a I don't know if this has been substantiated by anybody, but it was a rumor that there was a cut of this movie they did where this baby was actually sacrificed and died, and like test screenings like hated it, said it was like too dark, so they changed it. Now, I don't know if that's actually true, but like I kind of agree that for a movie like this, that would have been
Yeah,
too dark. So I think
that's really tough.
they
Yeah,
made the right choice if that was the case, and they went back on that.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, he's like telling his newborn son like they beat up all these pirates. Um, and so we get a recap of as he's narrating of the first Aquaman, where Arthur became king. We find out that he has since married Mera, or maybe he married her at the end of the first movie. I didn't revisit the first movie, so I can't remember exactly. But in the
Mm-hmm.
intervening years, they had a son. Um, so now we kind of get this montage of him like struggling to take care of his son. They get this recurring bit where he keeps changing the kid's diaper and he keeps getting pee in his face, and I'm like, okay, that's the level of the
Yeah.
film we're dealing with here. Um, we also in this montage, like he's doing like his kingly duties. He's having going to all these like king meetings and stuff, and he's like falling asleep, and he's like he basically hates his job as king because it's not fun and it's just all these kind of things he has to do but doesn't really want to.
Right.
Um, now this I found a little weird. Like I kind of question the government of Atlantis because he calls himself a king. So you would think he'd almost have like authoritarian, like almost do what he wants powers, but no, he
Yeah.
complains because he has to clear everything with like this Atlantean like parliament committee, and I'm like, are you a king or are you not a king? Like, it seems like you're more of like a president who has to deal with Congress. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like
Yeah,
a
but
true.
I think like in European history, like the king still had to deal with lords and other stuff. Like there were still those kinds of like different houses that he had to like work with. So I mean, I kind of think there's some sort of realistic politics there.
Okay. Um, okay, so yeah, I wrote. We find out that this movie is brought to us by Guinness, as he and his dad. I just instead of his dad, I just put Boba Fett because it's the guy that plays Boba
Right.
Fett. So him and Boba Fett have a conversation about how Boba Fett tells him that he um, basically should give his son a sibling, and that he regrets not giving Arthur a sibling. And Arthur is like, well, I met my brother and he ended up being a total dick, kind of foreshadowing the whole like this movie will be about him and Orm's relationship.
Right.
So Arthur notices that his son is communicating with the goldfish in the room. So like he's like, oh, he actually has my telepathic abilities,
Mm-hmm.
and so he thinks that's really cool. Okay,
Yeah, it
so
gets really weird. Like it's almost like AI generated like uh talk between him and his kid. Like he's like, "That's so cool," this and that. It just didn't seem like I don't know. It just felt like weird dialogue.
yeah, um, yeah, you're right. There is some weird dialogue in this movie. Yeah, because I remember in that scene specifically, he was like, "Oh, you got my." It seemed like it was very like God. It, I do remember thinking it was very weird language that he used because he was all talking about it in a way just like, yeah, we know you're Aquaman. Like, it seems like
Right.
you're
Yeah.
exposition to people who don't know anything about Aquaman or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So we transition to a sheet of the ice melting in the Arctic, and we get the title of the movie and everything. And weirdly enough, like the climate change will play a large part uh, of the plot of this movie.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. Okay, so in the Arctic, or maybe it's the Antarctic, I don't remember. Black Manta is there trying to find some Atlantean tech to fix his power suit that I guess was messed up in the first movie, like the
Mhm.
huge like visor and suit and everything. So Doctor Shin, played by Randall Park, who I remember he was in the first movie, but I don't like. I think he played a very small part in the first movie, but he's gonna be all over this movie.
He
Uh,
plays that typical scientist role who's very, he's helping, but it's against his will sort of thing.
right, yeah.
I don't remember him from the first movie. I didn't know he was in there.
He was in it. He didn't play a large part, and I think he actually might have been a part of like the like mid credit sting like scene or something where it was like basically saying that he would play a bigger part in this movie. So,
Oh, okay. All right.
so Doctor Shin drives a snow vehicle, like with tank treads, out on some ice to meet another scientist. But then a rift breaks in the ice, and them and the snow vehicle fall in this huge like ravine. The other scientist breaks his leg, and then a giant tentacle like comes out, grabs that guy, and pulls. That basically sends a thing to Manta and his people, like his location and
Mhm.
like a emergency like beacon or
These
whatever.
these guys have all the technology. Like this movie, there's so much incredible technology that you think they could just solve all their problems using that.
It's true because yeah, eventually he's gonna propose it like, oh, we should combine our tech with the surface people's tech to solve climate change. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, yeah, you guys got us beat. I think whatever we have, your technology is way above ours somehow. So you probably
Yeah,
don't need our help. You can probably just solve climate change on your own if you wanted
for
to.
sure.
So Manta and his crew show up and they go deeper into this ice cave. We see that there's a bunch of creatures frozen in the ice. And Shin says that the only reason that they are in there is because of climate change. He's like, basically, this would have been all solid ice, but because of climate change, it's been melting the inside of this, and that's how we're able to get in here.
Mhm.
So Manta finds a lake within the ice cave, and he wants to dive down deeper into it. So they all put on scuba suits and they dive down, and they basically find this ancient civilization. Um, As Dr. Shin sees a body frozen in the ice, that tentacle monster shows up and it kills almost everybody besides Dr. Shin and Manta. It does like knock Manta down to the floor. Um, so Manta sees this black trident broken in pieces on the floor.
Yeah.
And my thought is like, why is his first thought is like, I'm gonna go like pick up this broken thing and try to put it together. Like it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, was he trying to find a weapon to maybe fight off the tentacle monster? Is that what they're going for?
But even then, like sticking it together wouldn't you wouldn't think it'd fuse.
Right. That's another thing that bothered me in this movie. Because, so yeah, basically what happens is he puts this together, and when it does, his eyes turn green. And I wrote, he gets a message from Conehead Skeleton Man, who tells him that if he frees him, he will help fulfill his goal, which is killing Arthur and getting revenge for his dad from the first movie. So, but yeah, there's several points at this in this movie where like Manta will be fighting with like the two pieces of the thing, like it'll be broken and he'll be like using both pieces, and then he'll just like put it together and use it as one big piece. And I'm like, how does this work? Like, why? How does it like magically like fusing together and coming apart and you know what I mean?
And also, like, it seems like it worked when he fused it together. That's how he got his powers. Like taking it apart doesn't take them away. Like what's the point of fusing it then?
Well, and I was like, that's the other thing I wasn't sure because like his eyes turn green and all that. But I'm like, does he actually get superpowers from the trident being together, or does it just give him a vision? Like I wasn't completely sure.
They said that he had powers even without his suit, so I think the trident, like whatever it was, it gave him powers.
Oh, you're right. Because later on in the movie, like he punches Orm like super hard, like so. Yeah, it does give him power. So yeah, you're right. Like yeah, there's a lot of things that, and there's a point that we'll get to where Doctor Shin puts it together and sees the vision, as does Orm, and they don't seem to get those extra superpowers. You know what I mean? So it's
Right?
very
Yeah, I think
inconsistent.
it's very selective.
But anyway, he does that, and we cut to a whole 5 months later, where a news broadcast tells us that the temperatures around the globe are heating up and causing extreme weather events. Due to this, Mara tells Arthur that he needs to meet with that Atlantean council that he's always having problems with. So, like we referenced before, Arthur tells this council that they should reveal themselves to the surface world so they can combine their technologies and solve climate change. But I wrote the lead in charge says that the only way she'll prove revealing themselves is if they destroy the surface world. So she's very Hitlery, this
Yeah,
like lead opposition lady. She's just
yeah.
like, no, if like the only way we'll show them ourselves is if we kill them all.
And it's like a weird like rivalry they have with the surface world. The surface world doesn't even know they exist, and like even Aquaman mentions it at some point. He's like, "What is this? Like, if they knew about us, and they probably wouldn't be doing the
Right,
pollution and all this
right.
stuff they're doing." But you guys are keeping it a secret, so obviously they're not going to take that into account. It was just weird, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like Wakanda in the MCU, where they're like this really technologically advanced like society, but they're like trying to keep themselves hidden from the world.
Yeah,
So Dr. Shin gives us some exposition about how he helped Manta retrofit a large ship and several submarines that they found, I guess, inside that ice cave. Um,
yeah.
but they all run on a rare substance called. Now I couldn't remember the name of that substance. Is it? It's like orichalcus or orichalcum or something like that.
Yeah, I already forgot. I think you're on to the close
Okay,
enough.
I couldn't remember like which one.
Yeah.
Um, and they are currently trying to steal the most heavily guarded stash of that, which is in Atlantis. So they take these subs and they get into like the storage facility in Atlantis. They're loading up this orichalcum, calcus, whatever it is. But eventually they do trip the alarm. So Manta tells Shin to uncloak their ship and basically help blast them away out of Atlantis. So Shin unleashes a sonic cannon, which will come into play a lot in this movie, which I don't even think it kills Atlanteans. It just like messes up their insides, like or something, and like
It just burns them or
yeah.
something.
But anyway, like it messes them up enough to like go about their business. Um, so we get a scene where Nicole Kidman chases down some of the bad guys on like she's riding like a mechanical shark or something, which to me like one of the things about like Aquaman is like he can talk to the animals and like so you would think like she could like people of Atlantis could almost like ride real sharks and things like that rather than mechanical ones.
Yeah, I mean, we find out later they can genetically modify animals anyway.
But anyway, she's riding this mechanical shark, but it's eventually taken out by that sonic cannon. Uh, Mara stops Manta's sub as he's trying to get away, but he ends up blasting her with his, head raise and like hurts her pretty bad. and he's actually going to follow up and kill her. But that's when Arthur shows up and stops him. Um, so Manta kind of wants to fight and kill Arthur right there, but Shin tells him that they need to leave right now, because otherwise, like, they're not going to get away with that substance, because like the Atlanteans are
Right.
closing in on them. Um,
Yeah.
so to distract Arthur, Manta um, endangers like this, like, I don't know what you call it, like water like subway or something, like knocks it off.
Right. Like this doesn't can't everybody swim really fast down there? Like what is
That's what I
this?
was thinking. Like, do they? Why? That's true. They all can swim fast as hell. So why do they even need this transport? And like, would it really even like, if it crashed, would it crash hard enough to kill them? Like, I don't know. It just seemed weird to me.
Yeah.
Um. So Arthur catches up to Manta's ship, but he's hit with the sonic cannon, and it slows him down enough for Manta and his ship to get away. So now Arthur has a scene where he talks to both his mom and Dolph Lungren. I don't remember his character's name.
Right, yeah.
She tells him about the, like, again, the orichalcum, whatever it is, and about how it's causing this spike in global warming, and about how the rest of it has already been stolen from other facilities over the past 5 months. So like that's the reason they skip 5 months forward, is because like apparently like all these other stashes have been hit, they've been stolen, and they've been used, and that's
Yeah.
what's causing the global warming. Um, but my
Right.
thing is like they brought up a computer thing that like brought up where all these stash houses are, and Nicole Kidman's like, "Oh, see, they've been emptied." But my thing is like, if they knew that, like, why haven't they been trying to like fortify those other like stashes like around the globe, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they would have at least had somebody protecting them to like a scout, somebody to let them know that they're being, invaded or whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
weird, yeah. Because they keep track of them, obviously.
So Arthur thinks it's best. He thinks his best bet is to break Orm, his brother, out of prison, since Orm worked with Manta in the past and might know how to find him. And I was like, that seems
That
that
was
seems like a
thin.
dodgy plan. Yeah, that seems like a very thin explanation to why it would be good to do this. You know what I mean?
Because like I don't know how much he worked with Manta in the past. They don't explain that much. They don't really go into
Just in
it.
the first
All I
movie.
remember is he gave Manta his suit.
Yeah, it was a very, like, a part of me thinks like you probably had better options than this brother that like went all Hitlery in the first movie that you can't trust.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about these movies when villains have like turning good, is sometimes when you really think about what they were trying to accomplish in the first place, you're like, okay, his brother was basically trying to commit genocide on the entire surface world. And then this movie, we're
Yeah.
just like, he's okay. Look, he's coming around. He's a good guy.
He's got a good
Right, right,
heart.
right. Um, so they tell Arthur it's important that he can't be seen breaking Orm out of the Desert Kingdom's prison, or it will cause like an international incident. Now, I vaguely remember them going to the desert in the first movie and there being like this desert place, but for the life of me, like I can't remember why they would have sent Orm to a prison there instead of just holding him in Atlantis in a prison.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But anyway, because he can't be seen, he puts on this suit that allows him to be like temporarily invisible, and he also gets help from an octopus that will like basically open prison, like squeeze into places he can't get to and open doors for him, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a weird situation here because the dude lives in the ocean around all these sea creatures, and for some reason he's weirded out by the octopus. him and his brother. Like, I don't understand it. You talk to animals, you talk to sea creatures. Like, those are your people. Like, why is this octopus such a weird character to you?
That's true. Like he seems like so angry at this octopus and like, oh god, I got to bring the like he keeps like fighting with him and they do like the stupid thing where he gets like peed in the face by the octopus too. And it's just like
Yeah, it's so
I'm like
weird.
this guy regularly talks to sea creatures. Like and
Right.
generally in the comics at least like really loves them, you know, and like so it's like yeah,
Yeah.
why does he have such a tumultuous relationship with this one particular octopus? It doesn't really make sense. Now on the
Yeah.
plus side, on the music side, AJ, they do play that the guitar riff from Spirit in the Sky by Norm Greenbaum here, so I'll give the movie some credit.
All right.
So he breaks out Orm, who is all emaciated from not getting enough water. And they ride they get on like they beat some guys up and they get on these desert creatures that are basically, I guess, like large, like almost scorpion type creatures or something. And they ride them to the
Yeah.
surface, getting chased by the bad guys. Okay, so they get to the surface and they can like see the ocean in the background. So Orm he starts going uh, for that, and then uh, Arthur he goes invisible again and starts like fighting with the bad guys. So I thought this was funny. So in prison, Orm he has what's clearly like a CGI body that looks all like emaciated and skinny. But as
Yeah.
soon as he barely touches water, he he transforms into this six pack like buff like dude, and I'm like, that's the way water works on these guys. Is it can transform them instantly
Yeah.
from skinny nobodies to
It,
like muscular like hunks.
it really gets in their pores. My man had a Steve Rogers
He,
transformation in like
that's
two
exactly what
seconds.
it was. He had the Steve Rogers body, and then it was like the super serum, like you know, all jacked up body.
Do you love the way like he did all that escaping, all that fighting and everything, and then when he gets to the water, he gets just shy of like where the water actually is and drops down, and then the water has to like
Right. Yeah, it
run
goes over the
back
top of
and
him.
like catch up to him. Like right before he gets injured. Like, oh my gosh, that is such a oh,
So yeah, I wrote he magically transforms into He-Man, and that allows him and Arthur to easily beat the bad guys, who I wrote almost certainly saw Arthur because I don't think he was invisible for that whole fight. Like
yeah. I
it
don't
seems like
believe
he
it.
was going in and out of the invisibility thing. So I'm like, I really think somebody would have seen him. And plus, they could
Yeah,
definitely see that they escaped into the ocean. So it's like, of course, it was like, you know, an Atlantean who busted them out at the very least. So I don't know exactly where this took place, but at some point, Shin witnesses Manta talking to himself while holding the trident. Um, and now at Manta's jungle hideout, where they refine that Ori Calcum, he asks if he can leave, and Manta tells him, sure, if he thinks he can survive the jungle. So he decides to stay. And they actually have a couple scenes where, like, you can tell, like, Shin is becoming, like, very, like, wary. Like, he can see that Manta's, like, becoming a psychopath, but he's too scared to really do anything about it.
yeah,
Um, So Orm takes Arthur to a source of his in an underwater pirate bay. Um, and Arthur is hated by pirates, so they put him in chains. Um, oh, I noted this. Underwater creatures still drink bottles of booze somehow. Did you notice that?
yeah. So how does
I
that
don't
work?
know. It was nonsense. Like, because they have like this whole like almost like underwater casino, and but you see
Yeah,
characters like buying like these bottles of booze and like somehow even though they're all in water they can like open these and like drink booze out of them and I'm like how does this work? It's nonsense.
I don't know how anything works down there. They don't show any manufacturing going on. I mean, do they? Do they ever show like how they got their science to like actually? built it, how they work it, them using a computer down there. Like, how do they do it?
They never do that. No, that's the other thing is, yeah, you're right. Like they're using electronic equipment at points, and it's like I don't know how this works. Like it'd be one thing if like they had like houses that didn't have water in them, like buildings that didn't have water in them, and that's where they conducted most of their
Right.
business. And then as soon as they go into the water, like the gills come out or whatever. And honestly, I think
Yeah.
that would have been a better idea for these movies. But I think
Mhm.
they really wanted to do like see everybody's hair like moving in the water, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So Orm's source is called Kingfish, voiced by Martin Short of all people. He somehow got roped into this. Um, and I wrote, he is 100% underwater Jabba the Hutt. Like,
Oh
they
yeah.
didn't even try. Like, blatantly, this is underwater Jabba the Hutt.
That's all I could think of was
He looks
Jabba.
like him. He has like the slave girls all alongside him. Like, they didn't even try here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Orm tells Kingfish that if he tells them where Manta is, that he will get a favor from Atlantis. And Arthur is like, no, I don't agree to that. He refuses. So they get into this other mindless action scene, which this movie is full of. They fight. Arthur and Orm easily beat them, and then he basically ends up putting this fish tank bowl over Kingfish's head, and
Yeah.
like fills it with oxygen. So he's basically like suffocating him, torturing him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that seems convenient. That those, like, honestly, why would they have need of like diving equipment like that if like oxygen tanks and
Right.
like they live underwater, like they don't need those things.
Yeah.
So again, another kind of nonsensical thing. But anyway, Kingfish gives up the information that Manta is somewhere in the South Pacific. He's got this jungle hideout. So, as you mentioned, they can swim very fast. So Arthur and Orm swim
Mhm.
insanely fast all the way to the South Pacific to this jungle island, which holds Manta's base. And they can tell, um, so this is where they refine that Ori calcum, whatever, and it like billows like green smoke out the top, and like so they're like, oh yeah, we're in the right place. Arthur tells the octopus that he fights with to go get reinforcements from Atlantis, so it goes back in the ocean. Um, at some point, Dr. Shin finds the broken trident and puts it together, getting the visions that Manta got. Manta shows up and threatens Shin's life if he interferes again. And so again, this was the thing why, like, why is the trident able to uh, fuse back and forth, and like why didn't Shin get any powers like Manta did for
Right.
seeing
Yeah.
this vision? So Arthur and Orm are contentious with each other on this island, but they inevitably keep getting in these situations where like they're bonding with each other. So it's like they fight, but then something happens and they bond. Um,
Yeah.
at one point, Arthur gets Orm to eat a cockroach, and like the joke is that he ends up like he likes it, he enjoys it.
Yeah.
Okay, this I didn't understand at all. For some reason, the orichalcum has caused the flora and fauna on the island to grow huge. So they like come upon this like huge dead rat, and there's like giant like insects like eating on it, and I'm like, why? Why does this stuff that causes global warming and is like a fuel supply? Why does it randomly cause plants and animals to grow huge?
There's no real explanation in this movie. There's just a line that was brought up earlier by the scientist who said this can change the whole world, like it can alter the whole world or whatever. Like, but that's still not really, explaining what it's doing. Just,
It was basically
yeah.
just an excuse for like, another action scene. So they end up
Yeah.
getting chased by a bunch of giant bugs. Um, oh, I thought this was stupid. There's a scene where like Orm is like running all weird with like his arms behind his back, And Arthur's
Oh
like, "What are
yeah.
you doing?" And he's like, "You've never ran on land before." He's like, "You pump your arms," and then he like starts pumping his arms like, and he's like, "Oh, this is great." But I'm like, wouldn't he just naturally figure it out? I'm like, it seems so stupid.
Babies do.
So this was a scene from the trailer. Actually, eventually Arthur tips. He finds a statue, and on the statue it says like "Real kings build bridges" or something like that. And he ends up tipping the statue over this ravine and builds a bridge. So they go to the
Yeah.
other side, and then all the bugs are coming across it, and like they shove it down, and like the last bug, because the bugs can fly, like flies, and Arthur just like punches that one. But I'm like, if these bugs can fly, why didn't they just fly to the side where they are anyway? Like, why did they all fall down the ravine? Like, it seems like they could have jumped or flew far enough to get to them anyway.
You're right. I didn't think about that.
This is definitely a movie that nobody should think about this much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So Orm and Arthur make it to the base, and we get this scene where they're like running to the control room, and they're just like easily just like punching out bad guys along the way, like no problem.
This is weird to me because all the bad guys are wearing like these huge metal dome type helmets, and like still they're getting bonked on the head and they're passing out. And I don't know how that works.
Well, I think Arthur and Orm do have like superhuman strength, so I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess it's just such a concussive force that it like hurts them.
Yeah.
Um, so Dr. Shin shows up in the control room, and at first he pretends to threaten them, but then once the door's shut, he's like, "Okay, I'm on your side. Manta is possessed by this weird thing, and he wants to stop them." And they talk for a little bit, but then like this huge explosion knocks Orm and Arthur out of the control room, and it knocks out Shin, who the bad guys like pick up. Although they don't know that he's like turning on them. Scene. They beat up a bunch of bad guys. Eventually, so Manta has like one of his henchmen, like primary henchman, is this Asian lady, and apparently I found this on Rotten Tomatoes. Her character's name is Stingray. I don't think they ever say that in the movie, but
Nope.
eventually she
No.
shows up in an octopus sub and gives them a slightly bigger challenge. But they end up like basically tying a chain like around the legs of the octopus, and they knock her over. So now Manta shows up, and Orm thinks he can easily beat him since he doesn't have his power suit. And so this is what you referenced earlier. Manta punches him and like really hard, knocks him backwards. So he's like, "Oh, like something is different here." So yeah, he must have got powers from that trident, but nobody else
Yeah.
does. So Manta then fights Arthur with the broken trident, and I wrote, which he can seemingly connect and disconnect at will, because yeah, he'll sometimes be fighting with two parts of it, the broken, and then he'll fuse it together and use it that way. At some point, Orm grabs the trident and he gets the vision, but then he's blasted by Manta's rays. So Dolph Lundgren and the Atlantean reinforcements show up, and they basically just start shooting a bunch of missiles to blow up the facility. But a part of me is like, okay, I know that's their goal, but like Arthur is their king, and they know that he's probably inside that refinery. So, well, because the octopus communicated with them, right? So you would think they would
Yeah.
maybe go, okay, let's make sure Arthur gets clear, and then we'll light this place up. They're like, nope, we're just gonna blow it sky high. And if our king is in there, well, he took one for the team, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they actually ended up saving them because their timing was so
That's true.
perfect.
That's true. Um, so Manta and the bad guys, along with Dr. Shin, escape. Arthur tries to pursue them, but a large rock lands on him and stops him until Mera shows up and uses her powers to remove the rock. So now we get a scene where Dolph Lundgren, Nicole Kidman, Arthur, Orm, and Mera have a conversation. Orm tells him about the vision of the Lost Kingdom that was run by this king. I want to say his name was like Necrus. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that might have been the name of the kingdom. I'm
Yeah,
not
I can't
sure.
remember.
Necron?
Yeah, it's like one or the other. Like either the kingdom is Necrus and the king is Necron, or vice versa. Like I
Yeah,
can't remember exactly.
yeah.
Um, so the kingdom basically was run on the Orichalcum, but it was ruining the planet. So at that time, the king of Atlantis pleaded with Necron or Necrus to stop, but instead he somehow magically turned him and his people into monsters. And it's just like it doesn't really. So apparently, like there's just some straight up magic because there's got to be.
Yeah. Uh,
I don't think there was any science.
they got science
Yeah,
and
I don't think
magic
there was
down
any
there.
scientific basis to that. He just took his like trident, waved it, and he's like, "Okay, me and my people now are these powerful monsters." Um, so
Yeah.
they all went to war with the Atlanteans. Atlantis won the war, and the king of Atlantis used blood magic to freeze Necrus, slash Necron, whatever, and his people forever in ice. So I think the blood magic freezes Necron forever, but as far as all his other people, they were frozen in ice, and they just thought, oh, that would last forever. But now, thanks to climate change, it's basically started freeing some of the lower level monsters, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so they're like, well, if it was blood magic that sealed this guy in, basically, only Arthur, Nicole Kidman, and Mera are not Mera, Orm. So only Nicole Kidman, Arthur, and Orm have royal blood. But then they put it together. It's like, oh no, there is somebody else who has royal blood, the baby.
Mm.
So they put it together that the Manta's going to be going after Arthur Jr. So sure enough, we cut to Boba Fett watching the news with he's taking care of Arthur Jr. and the power goes out. So he goes to get a flashlight, and Manta shows up with his glowing red eyes, and he stabs him, and he's like, I'm gonna make sure you live long enough for Arthur to see you die. So the team shows up to the house, and the house is on fire. Boba Fett's like holding his guts, and he's like, coming out, and he falls to the ground, and he tells them that Manta took the baby. Now, I thought this was maybe some of the most like over dramatic acting in the movie. Everybody's basically just like, no. And
Yeah.
it actually kind of cuts, like it does a cut there where I'm thinking the director was like, oh boy, this is a bit much. I'm just going to kind of cut around this, like, because it probably gets worse. So basically, we cut right back, and Boba Fett is being nursed back to health by Atlantean tech. So, like, a part of me is like, this movie, like, they really didn't want anything too depressing, it seemed like. So they're like, because I feel like they could have let Boba Fett die. Like, but it's like, no, he's instantly just kind of brought back to life. Like, there wasn't even a lot, like, I don't know, it just seemed like this movie could have used some stakes. And with him, like, a couple minutes after being stabbed, like, being brought back to life, it was just like, well, if someone was going to be sacrificed in this movie, like, they probably could have sacrificed him, but I don't know. So the team plans to get the baby back. Nicole Kidman makes Orm and Arthur promise to get each other's back. Arthur says he knows a way of combating the bad guy Sonic Cannon. And Dolph Lundgren, okay, so, because that's like, they make a big deal about that Sonic Cannon. Like, oh, we got to take out that Sonic Cannon. It's going to cause us troubles. We get a scene where Dolph Lundgren, he's passing out guns to all his army. But then when Orm shows up, he only gives him an axe because he doesn't like him. He doesn't trust him.
Right.
So we get a scene where Manta launches a missile into an ice sheet. And this makes an entrance that he and Dr. Shin can take smaller crafts into the Lost Kingdom. And we see that the baby is on board with Dr. Shin. So the bad guys, this scene was so stupid, I thought. So the bad guys, they start charging up the sonic cannon on their like big ship. When all of a sudden a bunch of whales show up, and they basically, the whales start doing all their like whale calls at once. And
Yeah.
this somehow creates like a reverse like resonant frequency to the sonic cannon, and it causes the
Yeah.
whole bad guy ship to explode. I'm like, this
Oh yeah.
is so stupid. Like, this was their idea. Whales are going to synchronize their whale calling, and it's somehow going to make a ship explode.
I mean, whales are dangerous. Apparently, look, I don't know. I did hear that a humpback whale's like sound or whatever, it can burst your eardrums and possibly kill you if you're close enough to it. But I don't know how that science applies to a giant ship.
Yeah, so that was very stupid. But so the team, they make it to the Lost Kingdom. At some point, Orm saves Dolph Lundgren after pretending that he won't. Like, Dolph Lundgren, like a tentacle monster grabs onto him, and Orm, like, at first he's like not going to save him, but of course he comes around and he saves him, chops off the tentacle. And so now Dolph Lundgren trusts
Yeah.
him enough to give him a gun. Manta, he's taking the baby to the altar where he's going to like stab him and get his blood. But here, Dr. Shin finally betrays Manta and gives him a bag of explosives rather than the baby. And like the
Yeah.
explosives, they blow up, but they don't kill Manta. They just kind of knock him down. So Manta survives, and he ends up tasing Shin and taking the baby. So as Manta is about to kill the baby uses his, power, his, I don't know what you want to call it, telekinesis or whatever, to basically call to Arthur and let him know where he is. So then Arthur shows up in the nick of time and saves him. So they fight. I think Manta gets the upper hand until Orm and Mara show up to help. Mara takes the baby to safety, and then Orm and Arthur stop Manta. But in the process, Orm gets the Black Trident and is possessed. He gets in a fight with Arthur. Like, I think he like punches him, and Arthur like bleeds from his mouth. So this is enough. Now that there's royal blood on the altar, it starts waking up Necron. So Orm and Arthur have a tug of war with the Trident. But basically, eventually, Arthur convinces Orm to snap out of it and be a good guy and give him the Trident. Arthur throws the Black Trident at Necron, but he catches it. And at that point, I was so like kind of tired of this movie that I'm like, oh, it's not over.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was like, kill him. But luckily, it doesn't last too much longer. So now Orm throws Arthur his trident, and I thought this was stupid too. He uses it to shatter the Black Trident, basically like one of Robin Hood's arrows. You know how like Robin Hood like basically shoots an arrow into another arrow. He's able to do this, throw the trident just perfectly, and shatter the other trident and like go all the way into Necron and kill him. Which I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, Arthur must be pretty tough to like shatter metal with another piece of metal, and he's got to be really on point with his throw too to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he even got the prongs right.
Yes, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So this causes Necron and the whole place to explode, and the team narrowly escapes, but they do. Back on land, Arthur tells Orm that he will say he died in battle so that he can be free and not have to go back to the desert prison. So Arthur holds a press conference where he reveals Atlantis to the surface world. and he agrees to share their technology and save the world. And basically, you get this whole kumbaya of the whole world watching this on television screens, and everybody ends happily.
Yeah.
They're off to solve climate change and save the world. And then we do get a mid-credit stinger. Oh, and I should say that, so on the island, Arthur had this conversation where like Arthur was like, "You're so close-minded. Like, have you even like experienced the surface world? Like, have you ever had a cheeseburger with a glass of Guinness? Like, they got another Guinness line in
Yeah.
there." And he's like,
Yeah.
"You're missing out on all this." So now we get a scene with Orm enjoying his cheeseburger, and what does he see at this apparently dirty restaurant? Is a cockroach comes up. He takes the cockroach, puts it in a sandwich, takes a bite, and that's how we end
Mm.
things. Um, so again, a lot of really stupid things in this movie, but overall, I got to we're tearing it down so much, and for good reason. But then I'm like, you know what? Still liked it better than the Marvels. I did. I just
By far.
there's
Yeah.
a like I think you said kind of like some of the banter between him and his brother works, and like the effects aren't bad. It just to me, it's like it gets just like the first one, a little bit of action overload. I definitely got a little tired and a little bored by the time it was over. Um,
Yeah.
and like there's stupid things in it, but I don't know. For some reason, I didn't find even the writing to be as annoying as it was in the Marvels. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know.
No, I agree. I agree. The Marvels was just so bland, and there was just it seems so. It didn't really touch anything like emotionally. This one at least kind of there was some stakes involved. There was a relationship that you kind of cared
Yeah.
about. It was a little bit better.
Um, again, I'm not going to rate this movie very high. I still think it's not good. But AJ, I'll go to you first. What are you going to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10?
I mean, I think I gave the Marvels like a 3, so I'll give this a 5.
Yeah, I think I also gave the Marvels a 3. I'm going to give this one a 4. Um, I will say, I think when we did our Flash review, I might have given the Flash a 5, which now thinking back, I'm like, I would lower the Flash's score. Like, the more I think about that
Yeah,
movie, the more it annoys me. And I'm like, at the time, I think I was a little too kind to it. I would actually probably lower the Flash to probably like a 3. The more I think about it, I'm like, man, there was a lot of just horrendous stuff in the Flash that was really,
that CGI was
oh
amateur,
my God,
man.
so bad.
That was not a finished
So
movie.
bad. But
Yeah,
I mean, even with the Flash, like, even if the CGI was on point, the movie would still suck.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, I don't really endorse this movie. Like, it's not great. I'm glad we're getting, for the most part, a clean slate now, and I'm looking forward to what James Gunn does going forward. I'm I'm I'm
Yeah.
glad this is in the rear view. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I'm ready for a fresh start to the DCU. I do kind of wonder, like, all the announcements that James Gunn made as far as like DC movies and TV shows. I do wonder like how if they'll stick to all those or if eventually they'll be like, oh no, we're not going to make the show about Wonder Woman's mom or whatever. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's always changes. You see it with Marvel. It makes sense that they would have some changes in the future. Like everything's kind of up for change as you see like how the fans react to your past projects and what they might be interested in. So it makes sense that they would evolve and adapt.
Yeah, going into 2024, I think the only DC thing we might get in 2024, and I don't know if they've confirmed, but we might get Creature Commandos, the animated series, which is something I'll watch, but I'm not excited about. I don't know about you.
I've never even heard of it, so that's new to
Yeah,
me.
I'm not familiar with those characters either. I've never read a Creature Commandos comic book because even the comic books I think are pretty obscure, which
Hmm.
James Gunn definitely has an affinity for like the obscure characters.
Hmm.
I guess that's maybe one of my fears is that like maybe he'll play almost a little too much uh, with the obscure characters and like not you know give enough to the main characters. But I'm gonna withhold judgment though till we because like they announced like that Superman movie is gonna have a lot of like characters in it like Mr. Terrific and uh, I think Hot Girl and Metamorpho and kind of all these, and I think maybe somebody from the Authority, and so I'm like, seems like there's a lot of weird characters for a Superman movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so is this going to be like a new version of the DCEU, like where they try to tell like one big story, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think they're gonna um, have it a shared, connected universe, and just like Marvel, and try to tell one giant story.
It's a little nervous to have all those characters in the first movie that comes out. You know, that that's not the way Marvel did it, and Marvel did it pretty well at the beginning. Um, I don't know. Let's see how it works out, I
You
guess.
know what? Now that we've gotten more of TV shows on the Marvel side of things, I'm starting to wonder if it's even a good idea to have the TV and movie projects in the same universe. I think it actually hasn't worked very well for Marvel. Like, I don't know. I almost wonder if it'd be better if like I like having TV shows. Like some of the CW shows were good and some weren't. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess Marvel just hasn't totally sold me. They've had so many TV projects that haven't worked that a part of me is like wondering if they should keep going in this direction that they're going.
I mean, I'm willing to give them a chance. I know that they did a really bad job of like formatting these shows and like structuring them
Yeah.
properly. So we've seen a couple good ones, Loki and Wanda. So I mean, hopefully they put a better effort into the future programs, and maybe they can change our minds. I don't know.
Speaking of, I think that Echo show is dropping relatively quickly. I forget the exact date it's coming out, but I think it's soon. So we
Okay.
might be reviewing that. But that'll be in the
Yeah.
future. AJ, any final thoughts on Aquaman or the superhero universes before we sign off today?
It's gonna be a pretty dry year in 2024, so uh, it kind of sucks, but it's kind of a good thing, I guess. I hope they're working on better projects, getting it right. Refining the process.
Yeah, it really is because
Yeah,
like
that's pretty much
the majority of the superhero stuff this year is the Sony movies, which I'm not interested in any of those. Marvel,
right.
I think maybe only Deadpool 3, which I'm definitely I'll watch that. And
Yeah.
then Echo, and I don't know, maybe Marvel has another TV show lined up. I'm not 100% sure. But
Hmm.
but yeah, it'll be less superhero stuff in 2020. But maybe we'll be able to find some goodness in other things like Dune and Furiosa and non superhero related movies and television.
Right. Yeah.
But AJ, I think that's going to do it for us today. Everybody, if you will, please subscribe both to the YouTube channel and in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. Give us thumbs up, positive reviews, all that good stuff, comments. And if you will, you can also follow me over on Twitter/X at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. And that is going to do it for all of our shenanigans and poppycock this week. Please, please, please tune in again next week. Bye, guys.
Take care.